Aircraft.
It was one.
After seeing the defects in that structure, decided children, underage children, are supposed to be going to classes every day.
And experts also say that when you have a building that is meant for a school, it involves static movements, and frequent static movement is not the same requirement that they should have, like a residential area where people are staying, they come in and go. And thanks Providence, if that happened in the night, I understand some of the floors too were residents where people live in.
Residents and shops as well.
And shops.
So you have shops, residents, and then a school.
Well, it's unfortunate that this has again happened on Lagos Island. But Bayo, I don't think that the stories we hear from Lagos about building collapse on Lagos Island relate to the old buildings in Lagos. No. These are some of the horridly constructed buildings on Lagos Island. Those buildings are less than 50 years, the ones that have been collapsing on Lagos Island. And what you find is gross abuse of land use on Lagos Island. Land use is precisely what we're talking about now. You have shops, you have resident apartments, you have a school on the same floor. What do you want to achieve? And then when you look at the buildings, whenever they pancake upon collapse, you look at the quality of materials that have been used. Governor Ambode said yesterday that a number of buildings on Lagos Island had been earmarked for demolition on account of the lack of integrity of those buildings. So, but they get resisted, of course, by the owners and pressure. So, as Nigerians will say sometimes, it probably will require a madman, to say, hey, listen, these buildings, on account of public safety concerns, these buildings have to go down. Are you with me? Otherwise, from time to time, you watch, usually during the rainy season. Yes. During the rainy season, you will see a building 4 or 5 stories. In fact, when you look at the buildings as you are driving into Lagos Island, usually on Kata Bridge, but more likely on Eko Bridge, you'll see how unsightly some of those structures look. You ask yourself, who gave approval for the construction of those buildings?
Is it just who gave approval? What about the regulatory authorities in Lagos State? And you just said that some of the buildings have been earmarked for demolition. Yes. How long will it take for an action, to be effected? Otherwise, if they had effected action on the demolition of such buildings, this incident would have happened in the first place.
Maybe what the authorities would need to do is to provide alternative accommodation.
Yes.
Because if you are demolishing a building, it doesn't mean that you are losing the land. That's one thing to recognize. Because there was a time Lagos came up with a policy that if there was a collapsed structure on any plot of land, apart from the prosecuting whoever was responsible, the owner of the property, the owner of the land would also forfeit that land. But in the case of buildings that lack integrity on Lagos Island, because it's a traditional area, if you like, what they would need to do would be to say, look for alternative accommodation in the meantime while you pull down those structures and, give the specifications as to further...
Who will provide the accommodation?
No, it has to be the state government.
State government has
to be the state government, yes.
Well, the challenge, however, is that if the owner of the house in the first instance now has a plot, how is he going to develop it? And these are some of the challenges. And sometimes some of them even go to court to try and stop the demolition.
No. I don't think that will arise, Bayo. I mean, okay, you have developed it now, three stories, and look at the catastrophe.
All right, at this point, let's go to other stories making the rounds and in the newspapers we have this morning. Let's return to Daily Trust newspaper. Below the nameplate of Daily Trust newspaper, we have some stories there. Of course, this one has been in the air for a long time. Boeing grounds 737 MAX planes. That's on page 16. JAMB reschedules mock exams for April 1st. Page 3. Politicians resort to vote buying ahead of Kano rerun. Is on page 13. And just below the photograph on the front page of the Daily Trust, we have 22 killed in fresh Benungwari attack is on page 4. APC, PDP senators set to clash over post-militarization. And then we have how economic recovery plan expanded Nigeria's trade sector. It's on page 17 of Daily Trust.
All right, we'll take a look at the Nigerian Tribune. And by the way, the story on Boeing, it's also there on the front pages of virtually all the papers that we have this morning. Above the nameplate of the Nigerian Tribune, this is another story, pretty tragic. It comes with a kicker. Edo, gunmen killed DPO, pregnant officer, and 2 others in police station attack. And next to that is inconclusive polls. Protest rocks INEC headquarters. Youth, women take to the streets in Bauchi. And below the nameplate of the paper, we have this. Police arrest Oyo Assembly Chief Whip over Sugar's death. That's on page 31. Nigeria bans Boeing 737 MAX planes. And ICPC to seize 264 million naira properties from 3 civil servants. And very quickly also, from the Leadership newspaper, you have the story there on the front page. Federal government banning Boeing 73 MAX airplanes and approves new equipment for 4 airports. Lead story says reps to tinker with Electoral Act over inconclusive polls. May limit INEC's power to cancel elections. Senate to discuss flaws in polls, adjourns debate on budget. And PDP asks Commission to declare Abia North election inconclusive. And Bayo, let's take those stories first and then return to you.
Yes, Nigeria has taken the safety valve too of prohibiting the entry of 737 MAX 8 into the Nigerian airspace. This is part of the measures taken by many nations around the world. Mostly China, United Kingdom, and Europe have also prohibited the entry of that aircraft into space. So far, it is only in the United States that is still using the 737 MAX 8 because they say so far there is no indication of any defect. They are continuing. But to play safe, many nations have been on the side of caution. You will recall that in the 2 incidences that have occurred, the one in Indonesia and Ethiopia, it was just minutes after takeoff. The plane could come in, and when it is taken off, that is when the fears are now heightened, concerned about whatever must be responsible for that. Though black box have been recovered, but there are no information from the AIB so far about what the causes are. The concern, however, that is coming is from the House of Representatives. Some lawmakers.
Bayo,
yes.
I'm sorry, I don't know whether you still want to get into the Boeing 737. Yeah. By yesterday, the U.S. had also issued an order from President Trump grounding all Boeing 737 MAX 8 aircraft.
Okay. Yes. So 300 of them.
Yes, about there are about 347 such planes in service in different parts of the world, but in particular in the U.S.
436.
Yeah, in the U.S. Yes. Well, in the U.S., that's the latest. The Federal Aviation Authority was, of course, cautious in the first instance, giving assurance as to safety issues on the aircraft. But President Trump has already issued an order directing that further steps would need to be taken on the security as well as the glitches that have been observed on the 737, which ordinarily 737, not the MAX 8 or 9, is the workhorse of Boeing.
Yes, ideally. And Boeing itself is rattled, and they say they are also going to the works trying to find out what actually has happened. Meanwhile, the concern in the House of Representatives are some lawmakers, particularly a lawmaker from Kogi State, was sponsoring a motion of urgent and public importance, and he had threatened on the floor of the House. Sunday Karimi of Kogi State has declared that election inconclusive is at the stage of collation of votes are illegal, and therefore he had described it as a calculated attempt by INEC and his opposition parties to subvert democracy, and he's threatening violence. Similarly, another member by name Ali Madaki of Kano has also said that inconclusive elections is capable of throwing the Kano state into chaos. And he said we must resist that, and Nigeria will burn if they insist. Now, these are the kind of threats that is very unbecoming. You will recall that Kogi State was one of the states that recorded violence and death during the last state governorship and state House of Assembly elections. Similarly, only 2 days ago, the Emir of Kano had called on peace over the inconclusive election. And now for a member of House of Rep at the National Assembly, though he's covered by qualified or absolute privilege or whatever he says on the floor, but he has to take note of the proverbial birds that call for a rain. He's not completely, may not necessarily escape the rain.
Exactly.
Particularly also that what happened in Bauchi yesterday, some 5 persons have been reported killed, several others injured as a result of violence from the same gubernatorial and State House of Assembly election. Political thugs went on rampage, protesting along the street. And what were they doing? They were extorting money from road users and snatching handsets. And late into the night, gang groups of thugs belonging to political parties went on the clash. So much so that the public relations officer for Bauchi State Command, GSP, what is his name now, has now said that the situation is being brought under control and 9 suspects have so far been arrested. So there must be concern about our legislators. They are honorable members and they must be honorable in their pronouncement because the politicians and the voters tend to see them as role models, and when they call for violence, it becomes a matter of a trigger for their thugs.
As you rightly said, Bayo, I mean, it's unacceptable.
Yes.
To call for a resort to self-help when you have avenues to seek redress. Kirian, just before you go, this story I read, and I'm sure you also have, it's also there on the front page of the Punch newspaper, with regard to the incident that occurred in Edo State, a place called Afuze. It's in Edo North Senatorial District, where a police station was attacked by heavily armed men or persons. The DPO, the DCO, a pregnant police officer, they were killed. What is curious about it, and I think this is part of what the security agencies should try to focus on, the elections are over. Now, the assailants were said to have also visited the INEC office in Afuze and tried to, attack the INEC office. The elections are over. Several vehicles were burnt and also destroyed, damaged on the INEC premises, as well as the police station.
But the question to ask, Kinsley, is was that attack as a result of the election? Is it the aftermath of the election? Or are there normal criminals, who are operating in that state? Because going to attack the police station, which has nothing to do with the election that has been over, is questionable. And as a matter of fact, is a big issue. If a police station can be successfully attacked by hoodlums.
Yeah, but what I'm just saying is, look more closely and you might find a signature of a terror attack in what has happened.
It's not impossible. Afuze used to be a home of sports development, and it was for the forefront of sports development in the Dembelde State, you remember. And it's sad that this is happening there. When police stations are attacked, you recall the last time police stations were attacked so viciously was in the Offa robbery. And there, as many as 9 policemen were killed. But I trust one thing, the current Acting Inspector General of Police does not allow assault on policemen to go free. What happened in Bayelsa, you remember, where a Deputy Commissioner of Police was assaulted? They have been on the trail of the persons and they will hunt them down.
All right, now let's go to the editorial for today, taken from Daily Independent newspaper on page 16. Nigeria stemming the wave of oil theft. The rising incidence of crude oil theft is not only getting out of hand, but it's costing Nigeria staggering sums and must be nipped immediately by the current administration. The cabal responsible for the leakage must be smashed, and the sundry measures required for tackling the problem put in place. Bayo, briefly.
Yes, oil theft is something that has bedeviled Nigeria for a long time, so much so that among sometimes we export about 1.2 million barrels a day that we produce. A lot of it is stolen. But just not about three months ago, the NNPC gave an indication that it now has a system by which it can monitor all the quantum of the oil produced in Nigeria. With that signature identity, it can now know the quantity that leaves Nigeria and can also trace Nigerian oil around the world market. That is a positive development that can go a long way to reducing the oil theft that is going on. Other than that, this pilfering has been going on. Nigeria is losing a lot of resources by way of that kind of theft.
Some people are living big from that for many years now. At this point, Bayo, would like to appreciate your analysis
Thank you.
of the stories making the rounds in today's national dailies in Nigeria. This is Good Morning Nigeria. Well, Kingsley will now take us to Lagos, where we are going to be speaking with our correspondent on the collapsed building in Lagos. Kingsley.
That's right. You can see our correspondent on the right side is Paul Obukago. Is at the scene of the building collapse that occurred yesterday in the Tafaji area of Lagos Island. Hi, Paul. If you can hear us, give us an update on the rescue or salvage efforts at the scene of the building collapse yesterday.
We understand they've not been able to actually give us the exact figure of people rescued, but the information I have right now is that over 20 persons have been rescued. I have with me the Assistant Superintendent Fire Service, who was here all through night, and is here to give us further data concerning what they've done so far. The rubble of the building is what is being finally evacuated from the scene. So Joshua Young is right here with me, and I want to ask him some few questions on what they've done so far. Yes, Joshua, can you talk to us on what people have done so far?
Good morning. As at last night, when the crowd was finally controlled, we were able to continue job because initially there were some disruptions. But we've been able to, around 2 o'clock, rescue one other victim, a male, whom is said to be a dispatch rider or an Okada rider, either. Though his rescue suspected. And after which many other women came and they were saying their children are entrapped in trouble. But so far we have made use of the excavators available to try and see if we can rescue other children that are said to have been trapped. Honestly speaking, as I comment on this issue, all hands have been on, and all efforts have proved after fruitless to other people, because with the look of things, there is no child that is assumed to have been entrapped. Because we have checked all the looks and corners of the building, and I'm still speaking. There is no trace of any still. Though we've not finally left, we are still trying to see that we evacuate all the remaining roads before we left. So we've been here since yesterday.
Okay, still we are concerned about the number of occupants of the building at the time of this incident. Do you have any clue about it?
The truth about it is that since the third floor is said to have been occupied by two, the second floor rested. They also saw a business center, and the ground floor shops for pet trading. You know, in the morning, nobody was able to give out exact numbers of people, those in the business center that were in the building, and then the residents, because it's early in the morning, some of them have left for their respective place of work, and then some of the shops were not yet open. So give us the exact data they have is positioned to choose the exact people that were in the building. Even the school that is the talk of the town, because we are told that some of the students went for excursion. So the school on her own cannot say the exact number of children that were there, because it's like they don't have database.
Okay, we also understand that the owner of the building was not around, but his wife, children and grandchildren in when the incident happened. Were you able to verify that?
Yes, we are told that the owner of the building was not around, but the wife, the children, some of them were around. We rescued an elderly woman alive, and later rescued a woman and her child. But the husband of two was in the building. Unfortunately, when he was finally rescued, he was reported dead.
Okay, what about a woman who was pregnant?
Yes, that woman initially, she was rescued. But the news that later was around 3 a.m. the morning was that she gave up.
Okay. I've been speaking with Joshua Young, an assistant superintendent of fire service from the scene of the incident. The plan by the emergency workers here is that at about 8 a.m. they are going to give us an update, and that's why the general manager of the Lagos State Emergency Management Agency is going to be doing that. He's not willing to talk to us now, but at 8 a.m. they are going to address the media.
All right, Paul, let me just ask you this. We wonder if you have any information from the government of Lagos State with respect to what the government intends to do because of this collapse. We also understand that that building was among those mapped out for demolition in the past, but that didn't happen. So what is the position of Lagos State government in respect of this?
Is that the Lagos State government is setting up a committee to look into the immediate cause behind the collapse of the building. But one other thing is that people in the neighborhood actually said quite a number of buildings in this area have been marked for demolition by the state government. But they are a little bit surprised that action has not begun, to really bring down the structures that are structurally stemmed to be defective up at the time this incident occurred yesterday.
I was wondering, Paul, the fire service officer is with you there. Are they using any other aids, such as sniffer dogs, to try to ascertain whether anyone might still be under the rubble, other than just relying on their 5 senses?
Sign of sniffer dogs in this area this morning. All we saw was a combined team of federal agencies and state agencies working together with some medical crew. That's what we saw. But I want to ask the fire service official if there was anything like that. Did you people use sniffer dogs to actually maybe go around the environment to know if we have people in the rubble?
The dogs were actually brought from the dog section of the Nigerian Police Force. Dogs were actually brought, but they are used for security purpose, not for sniffing. So no single dog was taken round to sniffer to see if there is person or there are persons entrapped in the building. But dogs were brought for security purpose, to scare people, to enable people to work, but they were not used for what they are said to have been brought for.
Okay.
Correspondent Paul Omukago reporting live from the scene of the building collapse yesterday on Lagos Island. We'd like to thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria, and of course our viewers can look forward to more reports from that particular incident.
And Casey, you were asking about the sniffer dogs. Yes. What kind of training do the dogs of the police use are given? What kind of training are they given? Are they really trained to do that job, or is it just for security reasons? That's a good question to ask.
Yes, that's you have different types of training. The canine department or division of the police normally will have that for their different purposes. But sniffer dogs, you find that they are often used in situations like this.
Exactly.
They're hard to reach locations where you have a building collapse, because they can sniff out, the presence of a human being either by breath or some other device. That's the kind of training that the dogs normally would receive. But if you just brought the dogs merely for security, I don't think that suffices. Exactly. All right, but let's hope that they will up their game and then try to find out if there are persons buried beneath the rubble of that structure that pancaked on Lagos Island yesterday. We'll take a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll be talking about a review of security during the general elections.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the role of the media in election coverage. Exclusive on the National Broadcasting Commission, its mandate as the sole regulator of Nigerian media. Dr. Toba Daba then and Ishak Modibo Kawu now. This edition also features the king of stand-up comedy in Nigeria, Ali Baba. NTA standards to be ready for election transmission after decades of abandonment. Find out from the DG transactional elections in our political space. An evil wind that blows no good. DG, National Orientation Agency caution. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, x-rays the impact of social media on electioneering process as electorates present their expectations from incoming government. Meet some TV professionals behind the screen and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
You are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
And you are still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Our focus today is security challenges of the 2019 general elections, and to set the tone for our conversation, let's take this report put together by correspondent Kunle Adeyeye.
The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, before the 2019 general elections, called for a new approach in the deployment of security personnel. The Commission emphasized that its experience from the off-season elections since 2015 necessitated a new approach to security deployment. The new approach perhaps did little to enhance security during the 2019 general elections, which were still characterized by ballot snatching, attack on prospective voters, and even electoral personnel, leading to death on some occasions. Pockets of violence were recorded during the February 23, 2019 presidential election and National Assembly election in Delta State. Rivers State was also a flashpoint, and governorship election has been suspended in the state owing to unabated electoral crisis not unconnected to security. Oyo State was also in the news as it had its own share of electoral violence. Security agents themselves were not spared either, as some of them were victims of electoral violence. The case of political thugs posing as security operatives was also in the news. What accounted for security challenges during the elections? What was the place of intelligence gathering? Are there offenders arrested and will they face prosecution? Should the entire security architecture for elections be redesigned? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria are waiting to provide answers.
All right, thank you very much, Kunle Adeyeye, for that background. Now, joining us to discuss this issue in greater detail, would like to welcome our guests here in the Abuja studios as well as at our other network centers. First, the former Inspector General of Police, Suleiman Abba. Pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, viewers.
Okay, and also here with us is our regular security analyst, a security risk expert, Kabir Adamu. Pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Pleasure is mine. Good morning, King.
Okay, clear?
And from Port Harcourt studio, we have Dr. Chris Ekir, a public affairs analyst and former president, Ijaw Youth Council. Good morning and welcome to our program.
Good morning, Kiri.
All right, and from our Lagos Network Center, we have Mr. Emperor Chris Ibe, who is a politician, social activist, and entrepreneur. It's good to have you on our show this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerian.
Chrisley.
Yes, that's Mr. Emperor in Lagos.
Yes.
Okay, but let's begin the conversation from our Abuja studios. Suleiman Abba, of course, is the former Inspector General of Police, and he was the Inspector General of Police during the 2015 general elections. Here we are reviewing the security issues arising from the 2019 general elections. What is your assessment?
Well, it is true the security agencies have the responsibility of providing efficient security for the conduct of national elections. And I also want to believe that all the security agencies did their best, particularly in preparing themselves to the national assignment. It's also unfortunate that due to inadequacies, perhaps in the electoral process generally, not only from the security side of it, we had a lot of security challenges. Be that as it may, let me also say that they did their best at the end of the day. Some of these inadequacies may also arise or might have arisen from the lack of adequate preparedness of INEC itself. A situation where tension is allowed to arise from, the electorate, and you begin to see tension, and at the end of the day, politicians become dissatisfied and begin to, recruit thugs who threaten the conduct of the election itself or threaten the results as it may. I think we all have blames to share. All stakeholders have blames to share, really.
All right, thank you. Obviously, we'll come back to you as we make progress in this conversation. Now, let's turn to Kabir Adamu. Kabir, the police assured Nigerians of adequate policing prior to this election, more so when they also co-opted other security agencies, to give the support required. But what really went wrong? And, in fact, what's your assessment?
Let me give a bit of context to how INEC manages security. INEC has invested a lot in security. The most modern tool for managing security is called Enterprise Security Risk Management. Now, INEC got a tool on enterprise security risk management from an International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Support, which is a Norwegian-based institute. It has an electoral security risk management tool it helps developing countries and even the developed countries with. So INEC bought into that tool, which, like I said, is the most modern tool in managing security. It provides two bases. One for internal electoral processes, and then the other one for the external electoral processes. So very good. The second component with which INEC manages security is the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security, which is chaired by the INEC chairman himself. In terms of coordination, as far as I know, because there's an argument here and there, the coordination is done by the IG of police and I think the National Security Advisor. And there are about 24 government organizations within that committee, including the police, which, like I said, is coordinating the activities of that committee, and then down to the Central Bank of Nigeria, where some of the critical assets for the electoral processes are kept. So several organizations. To answer your question directly, and with the benefit of hindsight, after having reviewed, even though it's a post-mortem review and State Assembly,
Office of the NSA and coordinate the activities of the committee at the national level. And I also want to say that the police is solely responsible for charge. And I also want to believe you can't say the military are in charge because the military are never deployed
in some parts of the country, especially from where he came from.
I wish you can cite one. I was Commissioner of Police in Rivers, and I was Commissioner of Police in Lagos when 2011 elections was conducted. And just like you said, I was the Inspector General of Police in 2015 when national elections were conducted. You hardly can cite a situation where security agencies, confront themselves in the conduct of or the provision of security in any election. I can agree with the fact that there could be inadequacy of security personnel themselves at the polling units. I can also accept the fact that there are inadequacies in the law itself, the Electoral Act itself, with regards to who takes charge in making decisions on matters affecting security or matters affecting the conduct of the election itself at the polling unit. Because the law provides that it is the the electoral officer at the polling unit who makes decision with regards to an offense committed. Now, remember, even if it is an offense threatening the security of the conduct of the election itself, it is that electoral officer who has the responsibility to make that decision. For example, it is the electoral officer who will say, this man has committed an offense, arrest him. Of course, the police officer can arrest him, but it is the electoral officer who will decide whether the conduct is enough for that police officer to take him away from the place.
Well, I would like to go to Chris Keo in Port Harcourt to provide examples of the kind of lack of coordination that Kabiru Adamu talked about. The former Inspector General of Police has raised a number of points, but Chris Keo, what's your immediate response? Because the former IG doesn't appear to agree with your proposition.
Thank you. While I'm not going to say we're in a debate, I'm saying things as they played out before my very eyes in certain areas where elections held and reports we got from people who are very close to us in the Niger Delta area. I do not know what may have transpired in all. I had said in my own local government it was seamless because the police and the military were even not seen, were coordinated. But I'm aware that in places like Obiakbo, where a captain went to the local collation center with a team of military men, and a CSP was trying his best to talk to the captain, and the captain would not listen, and he took the area commander to SPU to protect the collation officer, who the IG is saying is supposed to be the one to say, arrest someone. She locked herself up in the toilet, and SPUs were protecting her. That is an interagency conflict. a situation where a military man beats up a police officer, a military man in a military uniform beats up a police officer with a police uniform. It's a conflict. A situation where the DSS is complaining that the police isn't listening to them, and that's why there's a conflict, and we're hearing that is a conflict. But I have not hinged that as the sole bane for what happened in terms of security breach. I've said that INEC is culpable because, one, the process of announcing results, delayed announcement, and collation created tension and agitations from citizens who became restless and began to push to get to know what had happened even after voted. That kind of tension will stimulate a response from security agencies, thereby causing a conflict. So it's a mix of citizens, INEC, and the security agency. I agree with the IG totally. It is police to police election processes. So the question is, how did the military get involved? That's where we need to begin to look at laws to tweak what roles the military will play. The army is trained to shoot to kill, not trained to police people. And the army is trained to deal with territorial challenges. We have enough in terms of terrorism. What I think that we should be doing going forward is to recruit more policemen. We don't have enough policemen. We just talked about the attack in Afuzi, where armed men will run into a police station and shoot dead a DPO. Someone was paid his price for national service. The only reason that happened is that station does not have manpower. Citizens know about it. So we need to improve on policing, improve on manpower in the police, improve on even the firepower and training of the policemen, so they're able to take responsibility. We also need to, I heard Kabiru says that the military doesn't seem to want to subject himself or themselves to civil authority. No, it is wrong. Constitutionally, the president is a civilian and is commander-in-chief. And therefore, if he sends his army out, they must know that they are responsible for their citizens. Armies of countries don't shoot their citizens. They defend their citizens. They die for their citizens. In Nigeria, the reverse is the case. Oftentimes, once they have the slightest opportunity, rather than allow the police, regular police, intervene, there's a show of force. And when the police see there is this interagency conflict, and it's not just between the police and the army, police, army, road safety, civil defense. In fact, in a particular case in Bayelsa, a civil defense shot a police officer. So this may not be only around election areas. It's an everyday occurrence in conflict. And I think that the security agencies must understand that they are to work as for national security and peace. And the IG must know, he knows, that in 2015, when Ombu was CP before 2015, when Ombu was CP in Rivers, there was a lot of conflict between the CP and the brigade commander over who chairs the Security Council meeting in the state, where it is supposed to be the police officer and the brigade commander. Ombu keep having this back and forth conflict. He knows that these things existed between police and the military, and they must find a way to smoothen it out so we all know where to go. We cannot continue to bury our head in shame and say it is fine, there's no interagency conflict. There is. But what really created the problem for the election is that INEC was micromanaging the process and creating tension among electorates who would demand for results to be announced as being collated. And that was the major bane of all the conflicts you saw in the elections.
All right. We appreciate your comment on this very issue, which, of course, Kingsley, it should be a topic for another day, the interagency conflict, not just during elections, but in the day-to-day functions and responsibilities of these agencies. Now, let's go back to Lagos, where we have Emperor Chris Ibe. I hope you can hear me very clearly now. And I'm also sure that you've listened to other panelists on this particular program on the issue of security during the 2019 general election. And you are in Lagos, and I'm certain you also you were there during the election. So what's your take on the security lapses in that election that led to several conflicts, agitations, and what have you?
Thank you, Kriya. I like to approach it differently, from a different perspective, different context, not really the way they have discussed it. Yes, I am out of here in Lagos, but during the election, particularly the National Assembly and the presidential election, it was in my state, Enugu State. Approaching this thing in a different context, is, first of all, we have to do proper prognosis of why we're having challenges, security challenges. Is that the real thing? Is there anything underpinning it? Is there any reason why we're having all this conflict here and there? And the answer is yes. Our electoral process needs to be properly and strengthened and approach it differently so that people don't go into conflicts resulting into all the security challenges that we have witnessed. I think that adopting a new strategy to election can eliminate some of these things we're facing today. In my industry, I am from the oil and gas industry, upstream particularly. That's what the IOCs call go zero to fatality. And fatality means when you are in an operation and there's an incident involving life. They will tell you they don't want to see any fatality in their work site. They will tell you they don't want to see any fatality in an area of operation. So in 2019, for example, they can set a go zero. We do not want to have any incident or accident. So can we set that as a standard in our Nigerian politics and the way we approach politics? Why do we have thugs? Why do we have to have military? Why do we have to have police? And why do we have to have paramilitaries participating in Nigerian politics? It's simply interest. Of course, inadequacy of policing, inadequacy of effective police coverage or security coverage in various election points would definitely cause security breach. I take my local government, particularly, for example, my local government, Ogu local government in Enugu State. We have some flashpoints. We noted very serious flashpoints in the state. We noted very serious flashpoints in my local government. These particular flashpoints, or those particular flashpoints, were made known to the police authorities by my very person, were made known to the DSS, were made known to the military. Rather than being proactive, the security agencies would rather be reactive. And that's one of the challenges we're having. And again, what is the electoral process? Can we change the electoral process we have in Nigeria? Can we change the mode of distribution of materials? Because from day one, once there's an election, we'll start facing challenges from the distribution of materials, electoral materials. Parties, party agents, party representatives, all jostling to take over materials, all trying to hijack materials. Can we approach that differently? Can we even say that, hey, we must not transport materials all at the same time to a certain point in various states before distribution of those materials? Because this is where the problem starts. Everybody wants to hijack the material. People want to take possession of the sensitive materials. One party agent is struggling over the other party agent, and in the milieu of the confusion, people engage in thuggery. People engage in all manner of banditry acts. And the police are overwhelmed. I agree with my brother Chris from Port Harcourt, who had actually captured it very, very well, that the police are overwhelmed. The military is even are not supposed to be around where you have the election going on. We have incidences that when it occurred, we alerted the security men. I mean, we have, okay, in my local government, we have hinterlands that are not accessible by the police, that are not accessible by the military, that are not accessible by the DSS. You have an emergency call that they are being attacked. You have an emergency call that ballot boxes are being snatched. You have an emergency call that certain situation is going on there. Police will not get there on time. And most times, it then borders on who is reporting this matter. Are they working with the police? Are the police working with a certain party in the state? Like, my state is predominantly PDP. Are they working with PDP, for example, in my state to deliver the state to PDP? And when an APC person calls for an intervention, you see a foot dragging, you see sluggishness, you see slow response on the part of the security. And before then, they would have meted, some kind of injuries on, harmless individuals and armless individuals that are there to vote. So I believe that we need to do a proper prognosis. We need to sit down and do a post-mortem. And it's not just about talking. We believe so much in talking in Nigeria. My approach is we should be more reactive. We should be more proactive than always reactive. We have security challenges everywhere. In Anambra State, for example, in Abuja, certain individuals competing against him, the intent and their plans to overwhelm them with thugs. And he demanded that police be effectively sent, that area be effectively manned by security agencies to ward off those thugs. But disappointingly, that did not happen. Instead, what we witnessed in that community called Obosi was the loss of 2 lives. 2 young men were hacked down. The hoodlums came from another community that would take them about 20 minutes, 30 minutes drive to get to the community. But they got there, of course, they overpowered everybody. Like again, someone said, there was an attack at the police station yesterday in Abuja. Why would that happen? Number 1, lack of firepower. Number 2, lack of adequate manpower. Number 3, lack of...
Probably the most potent.
Does not allow of talk.
Country.